Howdy folks, are you ready to make carving great again? Well, today we're going to be carving a Trump caricature, and of course, we're going to be using a Trump stencil. So before we go any further, this is not a political statement at all. That's all I'm going to say about it. Alright, let's get to carving. Okay folks, so as with all my videos, the links to these stencils are going to be available in the description below this video. And if they're not, just comment on it and we'll get it to you somehow. Okay, so to carve these guys, they are just carved on a flat piece of wood. So this stencil is available in a 2-inch version and a 3-inch version. 2 inches being the width. So that's 3 inches. The actual height of it is about 3 1/4 inches for this guy and about 4 to 4.5 inches for this larger one. The actual height doesn't matter because all you need to do is take your stencil, set it onto your piece of wood, trace how tall it is, and then take it to a bandsaw or a handsaw or something and just cut it off right there. And it's very convenient because this piece of wood is roughly 1/4 inch to maybe 3/8 of an inch wide. Thick, I mean. Okay, so let's go ahead and trace it out and get to carving. Okay, so to get started, place your stencil on your piece of wood. There's a convenient lip over here that lets you hold it in place pretty easily, and then trace everything that you could see. So I use a Kurutoga mechanical pencil. This is a 0.5 millimeters lead, and it really lets me get into these pieces right here. But any mechanical pencil that's pretty thin lead will let you do this. So the holes are about 1 millimeter wide, so even if you get the largest mechanical pencil, it should still work out. So all I'm doing is tracing the profile and then tracing everything on the inside. And if you move it, that's okay. You can always push it back into place and get it back where it needs to be. Okay, excellent. Now that's what that looks like. And you can always come back and connect some of these lines if you need to. Okay, let's start carving. Okay, so as you can imagine, the first thing we're going to do is cut out the profile. So with whatever knife you want to start with, let's get started. And this is probably the trickiest part right here, which is cutting the end grain completely flat. Okay, so now we're going to take out this section right here. Okay, now let's do the hardest part, which is going to be this face profile. So just take it a little bit at a time, right? Do the front section over here, and then take that line further and further back. So we'll start on this face and then take the knife back like that. So right here, little V's, because that's all it is. I'm always cutting and then checking to see what it did, right? So I'm cutting a little bit, seeing where the profile actually is. Okay, like that. And we as humans have a tendency to shy away from the line. Remember that this pencil has a thickness. Whenever you put that stencil down, the pencil was actually on the outside of that stencil. So even if you cut the line completely away, you're probably still at the edge of the stencil. So just keep that in mind. So of course I'm not doing it any different. I'm still leaving the line, which means I still have plenty of room to take that in some more. Okay. There we go. Nice. Now I can start to shape that hair, that luxurious hair. Okay, and I want to give myself a little bit of a curve up here. Excellent. And I'm using a roughing knife. You can absolutely use a detail knife for this. You know, just take it slow. Okay. So now we're going to try to outline as much as we can. So put my knife down, put the piece of wood down, and trace that hairline. You can also take a V-tool and outline it that way. So you can get away with this like for the hair and probably for the majority of the suit, but for the face itself, you're probably going to need to outline it with the knife itself, and especially for the inside of the ear. But that's okay if you mess it up, you know, it's not that much wood. So you can always come back and try it again. Okay. So really I'm just doing the hairline and the outline of the suit. So let's see. The arm is a pretty good one to do this with. The shirt and tie, I'm probably just going to do with the knife. And essentially this turns into a chip carving, right? There's very low relief, but you have to kind of know which pieces go under which. You know, you at least have to think about it. Yeah, you see that? That may have been too much on that one. That's okay. Let's switch over to the knife and see if we can salvage that. Yep. Let's see. Let's do that shirt. Let's do the tie. And of course the dimensions of the tie get a little funny because we're looking at it from the side. So this actually looks like it should be a shirt over here, but it's actually a tie that's kind of at a weird angle. So first thing I'm going to do is that knot, I'm going to try to make it relieved from the rest of the tie. So like that. That'll at least let me remember that, hey, that bit is right there and I need to do something with it. And also, this is about the only piece of shirt that there is on there. Well, of course, other than this section. But this is going to be essentially the lowest part of the body. Alright, so let's keep on shaping that tie. So now it's just a matter of tucking things underneath other things. So this tie needs to be underneath the neck. The neck needs to be underneath the shirt. So even though you came at it with the B tool, still need to outline it with the knife. This is probably when it helps to switch over to a detail knife. So you know what, let's go ahead and do that. So I have a nice big detail knife over here. Still not as small as it should be, but you know, still a decent size. So we're going to do something kind of crazy. We're going to actually remove all this detail in the face. So right here, we're going to go up a little bit. And the reason is that we want to tuck that head, the face at least, into underneath the hair over here. And this section of the hair, we also want to tuck it in right here. And this section of the face back here. Good. Okay, finish outlining that ear. And let's do those lines on the inside. Now, one thing you might want to do is to connect this section right here to that right there. If you don't want to, that's fine too. It works, but I've had luck with it looking like that. You know, ears are a tricky thing. They can have a lot of different angles and such, and you know, at the end of the day, it's your carving. You do what you want. Now just relieve that little piece of wood from the inside there. There we go. And relieve this piece of wood underneath the neck there. Now here's that jawline. So, there it is. Good. Make sure to round it over a little bit, you know, give it a little bit of rounding. Now the shirt, we're going to angle it inward a little bit. Same as with the suit. But remember, the neck goes underneath the suit. Gosh darn it. Okay, and then tuck the shirt underneath the suit as well. So right there, that's all it takes. A little bit. Of course, we can always come back and clean it up a little bit more, right? So the tie goes underneath the shirt, at least right here. I'm not really sure what these are called. I forget. I know I knew at some point in my life, but don't remember it now. Collar. Aha! See? Collar stays, right? Alright, and take off those hard edges. Take off that pencil line. There you go. Yep, and this is why you need a detail knife. Okay, get that tie underneath there. And you see, this is the only piece that I'm kind of at odds with. Okay, and then always remember the grain direction. Okay, grain direction is going that way, so let's do that. Hopefully that's not too much material. That's good. Okay, let's clean up this fuzzy right there. Shape the arm a little bit. Oof. What did I do? Oy. grain over here is not happy. Okay, so that's fine. So what we can do is just move everything back a little bit. I'm not really sure why the grain did that there. I should have caught it, but you know, performing on live TV and all. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Really, it just needs to be good enough to fool your brain. Because obviously we're not getting nearly enough depth to like a full-size caricature. Okay, so now let's shape this face a little bit more. So I'm going to remove some of this material here. There we go, like that. You can even use number 1. Right, this is probably a little bit nicer to do with. I really want to get rid of all those fuzzies. Even in the hair as well, so let's go ahead and do that. This tool is actually super cool to do these corners with. Alright, let's shape the hair around the ear over here. So just relieve it just a little bit. Okay, that's good. And then clean up the ear some. So there we go. Just like that. Okay, let's shape the back of the head over here. The hair, I mean. Alright, yeah, very low relief, but it's, you know, turns out pretty good. And just take your time. I know that I'm going a little bit quick over here, and that's because I've kind of carved it a couple times already. Okay. So now we're going to use a stencil and redraw that face. So that's the great thing about this. But one thing you can do is just start to look at the profile and be like, okay, well, what looks good for a forehead? What looks good for the head? You know, we're going to draw in the eyes. They're doubtlessly going to be in there, so we're going to give a little bit of depth to some of the things. Okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and put our stencil back on there and retrace the profile. Okay, so here's our stencil, put it up over here again, and since you don't really have anything to line it up with on the face, line it up on the suit. Right, and you'll see that even though I cut away as close as I could to the face, look at that, there's plenty of material still left there. And yeah, it's me bending the stencil some, you know, it's not that big of a deal if you go past the line some. Alright, so I'm gonna hold it up as close as I can to where I think it was. And I'm going to redraw some of these lines, especially in the hair. Some of those curved lines are really nice to have in there. Okay. Alright, so now for the face, I'm going to do whatever is kind of outstanding in the profile. And then of course I'm going to go back and do everything interior. So So there, I have that nose. Okay. There's the bag for the eye. There's the eye itself. There's the eyebrow. Okay, let's see. These two crow's feet. Okay, take it off and see if the face makes sense. Okay. That's good. Okay. So now, I'll tell you that this is probably, obviously the eyes are going to be one of the hardest parts, but there's plenty of depth and stuff to play with in the mouth as well, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this eyebrow over here. That's pretty much where it's supposed to be. Okay. And yes, he does look a little bit angry. I'm sorry. That's how we decide to get him drawn. So, yeah. Alright, so the first thing is I put a little stop cut right there at the bottom of the eyebrow. And I'm relieving the nose to make it come up like that. Okay? Now I'm going to take that back to where the line of the eye is. Like that, and I'm going to take it up. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line up here, which lets me know how big that eyeball was. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit more. And all the while I'm kind of taking that nose back as well, because it doesn't need to extend right to the eyebrow. Right here. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to define this line right here next to the nose, and I'm also going to take the upper lip and define it as well. So these are all very small cuts. This is definitely the part where it can be easily messed up. I think the 3-inch version is much more forgiving, but there's more wood there to remove. So, yeah. Okay, so take it upside down, do that little, separate the nose from the mouth. Okay, and then also separate the nose from that fold right here a little bit. So, kind of hard to say which one is supposed to be on top of which. I think the nose is supposed to be on top, so let's do that. Okay, and take that over like this. There we go. Now we can relieve the nose just a little bit more on this side to make it a little bit smoother. Okay, let's see. You can always take a number 7 if you wanted to and do that eye socket. Number 7 should have enough curvature in there to do that. Now for the eyeball, I use a number 11 1mm, or you could even just use your knife, really. So over here, essentially it's a little V cut like this. Let's see, let's just use the knife for this. So right here, and like that, and like that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, let's also define the top of the nostril right here, so that the bridge of the nose has some definition. Okay, let's round over the nose some. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Now let's round over that brow just a little bit. Okay. And actually, what we're going to do with that eyebrow is we're going to make it a little bit larger. Right? It seems a little bit too dainty, I think. And if that's where the brow is, make it a little bit larger like that. Okay, and this one doesn't really require much. You could easily just use a number 11. That's 1mm like this. Or you can define it further, like, you know. That looks pretty good. Okay, and then of course, you want to remove the material on the top over here. Okay, and take off all that pencil right there. Okay. Maybe you want to remove some material there. Okay, and then for the eye, all we're going to do is just color it in with some pencil. Nothing more. Good, good. Now before we leave the eyes, we're going to do these crow's feet right here. That number 11. I guess you could do this with like a micro V tool if you wanted to. And that bag right there. Okay, now let's extend this just a little bit down to the mouth. Good. And let's do the mouth itself. So take your knife like that, separate the lips, not too much, right there, and take your knife and trace that line down like that. Okay, it looks kind of grumpy. There we go. These eyebrows look a little bit too big to me. Let's see. Maybe we can take a little bit off right here. And a little bit more off right off the top. Maybe even right here. Yeah, there it is. That's what's gonna do it. Hopefully. Like I said, folks, caricature, not actual carving of a Trump figure. But, you know, each one is a little bit different. That's okay. Now we're going to define this chin a little bit more. That looks pretty good so far. Okay, cool. So, this jawline right here, just with your number 11, or I guess even a V-tool. Yeah, let's try a V-tool. Does a V-tool work for this? Where'd the V-tool go? There we go. Alright, let's see if the V-tool works. Yep, it's a little bit thicker, but yeah, you know, I like it. That works. And now, just get rid of all those fuzzies. So this number 1 is ideal for that. Let's see what we can do about this ear. If we can remove some of those fuzzies on there. Maybe. The problem is that it's so wide. But that looks pretty good, you know? Now let's move on to the hair a little bit. Okay, let's see. Now let's do the hair. And you know what? For the hair, I'm going to switch to a V-tool, but first I'm going to shape it. I'm going to round it off just a little bit more. Yeah, like that. A little bit more shape. There we go. And if your knife can't make a bend like this, then you need a thinner blade. I found that that's definitely the advantage to the thinness of a blade, both in this direction and in this direction. Okay, let's see right here. Okay, so let's do the lines that we already have on there. Not terribly deep, you know, just deep enough. And right behind the ear. I will give him this, he does have luxurious hair. I would know. Okay, and let's do some extra ones. Just kind of like that. Nothing too crazy, just enough so that it's recognizable as a hair. Let's see if we forgot anything. And you know, you can always come back and fix up a couple things. For one, you could probably give a little bit more texture to the face, or not, you know, kind of relieve it a little bit. Looks a little flat right here, but hey, that's, you know, kind of par for the course. It's a chip carving. There we go. Okay, let's see right here. Well, there we go. Look at that. They look pretty darn similar. And that's worth something, I would say. So, anyway. And if you wanted to fix up the back, this one was obviously on a scrap piece of wood. You could either use your number 1 to flatten it out. I used to spend a lot of time just going to a hand sander and kind of trying to keep this completely flat and polished and sand it down, and finally I said, you know what, I'm not doing that nonsense anymore. So now on, I texture it. So you can use this number 1, or you can use my other favorite tool, which is this number 7 bent neck 10mm, and texture it. And I honestly prefer the texturing. Just make sure that it's seemingly random, otherwise it just looks too robotic. I would say, like, if you just go straight left to right, you know, kind of thing. So just give it a, vary the lengths. And there you have it, folks. There is a Trump caricature. So like I said, the stencil link is going to be in the description, along with most of the tools that I use here. If you do have any questions about it, feel free to drop us a comment or just get in touch with us somehow. I am very active on Facebook if that's where you find this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope you enjoy carving your own Trump caricature.